Well, in case you were just joining us this morning, we wanted to get you up to speed on the governor's race in Wisconsin. Tony Evers has been declared the winner, meaning Republican Governor Scott Walker is not going to be serving a third term in the state's highest office. And I am very happy to have a guest on this morning's show today. I'd like to introduce you to Anthony Chergosky. And Anthony, you are at UWL.
Yep.
You are political in this political science department there.
Science department.
And this is the first time I've met you.
Well, it's so nice to meet you,
Jen. I know,
Jen.
it's very nice to meet you, but we were just discussing something really interesting about Governor Walker. I think a lot of people surprised. We knew going into this race it looked close,
Yep.
but you were telling me that it's very popular across the nation this morning.
The #1 trending topic on Twitter, Scott Walker. The #3 trending topic, Tony Evers. Democrats might be a little bit disappointed about some results that happened, certainly in the Senate with the Republicans expanding their majority in the Senate. But for Democrats looking for something to be happy about this morning, nationally even, they're looking at the Wisconsin governor's race.
Now, we watched these numbers, the poll numbers, coming into the election, and it was tightening going into the election. And so I think a lot of people knew that it would be close. I'm not sure how many people really thought Tony Evers could pull this off. What do you think it was about Tony Evers, the candidate, or is it the time and what's happening right now in the nation that gave him the win?
Well, Jen, the timing matters. This is a midterm election with a Republican president, and for all Republicans, up and down the ballot, that puts them at a disadvantage. We think about some of Scott Walker's previous victories in 2010 and 2014. Those were more favorable years for the Republicans, and so he had more success in those years. Now, with a Republican president in a midterm, that makes it difficult for Scott Walker to hold on. Plus, it's, I think, difficult for governors to make the case that they deserve a third term. I think after 8 years, the time for a change message by Tony Evers might have resonated with voters. Voters might be looking for something new after 8 years, and after 8 years, Scott Walker might have found that it was difficult to fire up his supporters.
Is there a specific message that you think resonated with voters that Tony Evers sent out?
I think his message on education resonated. I think that he was viewed by voters as credible on this issue as the state superintendent of education. And polls showed that voters really cared about education to the extent that they were willing to raise their own property taxes if that was what it took to increase education funding. So the education issue really mattered. I think at the end we saw Tony Evers also introduce a tax cut proposal. I think voters were concerned about taxes, and so that kind of 11th hour proposal by Tony Evers might have eased some of those concerns a bit. I think it was a smart strategic move. We'll see if he follows through on it as governor. Governor
Walker has yet to concede at this time this morning. Can you explain a little bit about the recall situation? I mean, about recounts, excuse me. I know that it's over 1%, and that matters, right?
It does. That is more of a margin than will trigger a recount. So right now we are outside of the recount territory. It means that unless something really bizarre were to happen, that Scott Walker is going to concede at some point.
Going to come out and concede. I did want to ask you before we take a break here, what a Governor Tony Evers will mean for this state in a 2020 election?
Absolutely. In 2020, we have very important elections coming up because as control of the legislature is determined, that will have major implications for redistricting coming up after the 2020 census. Tony Evers is now in a place where he can veto a map drawn by the Republican Party, a map of legislative districts. So that will matter big time for the congressional districts and the legislative districts that Wisconsin has going into the next decade.
And as we know, we've been following how this has been an issue in this state, particularly with the redistricting and how the districts sort of shape out. So definitely something to keep in mind going into the future. Well, we are going to keep Anthony with us for a little bit later in the show to talk about what happened nationally, but we are going to take a break right now. We've got much more to come. Don't go away.